Little like, hi there. This is Let's Talk About Dating with Christine Baumgartner and Barry Selby. Hi, Barry. So great to see you again.
Hi, Christine. Nice to be back again for more fun and games.
Fun and games. I get my weekly Barry fix.
Yes, well, likewise.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about how to say what you mean so that you can gain trust from the other person. I think that it's very challenging always for people to sometimes even figure out, what do I mean? What do I really mean to say? What do I really believe? And then how to say it so that you think the other person has heard it, and then to check and see if they really did.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to trust somebody, you really want to trust their word. You want to trust that they're going to tell you the truth, even if you might not like it. And boy, in the world, it's a hard thing to do, and certainly in romantic relationships. And boy, I think one of the hardest things is the more we like them, the more stake there is, the more challenge there is of, what if they leave me because I say this? What if they don't like it because I say this? And there's just lots and lots of potential pitfalls. So
Right.
Such a juicy topic for us to talk about today.
And on top of that is also the thing about how you say something, because it's not just what you say, it's about how you frame it. And
Yes.
the other part of that also is sometimes we say things without realizing what we're saying either. So a lot of it's got to be self-awareness. So we can actually okay, what am I going to say to somebody, and what do I mean by it? Am I saying what I really mean? Because a lot of times we do have this thing of having a dualistic way of communicating. We say one thing, but we mean something else.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And I've been in relationships in the past where I did that, and I was done to that way. I was done to me the same way. So I definitely know how painful it can be. So yeah, this is a very rich topic.
And the other part that I would love to wrap into this is, even when we have the best intentions,
Mm-hmm.
intent is, sorry, Sammy's wiggling my computer.
So you take it over, huh?
Yeah, he really is. He's feeling so much better. So
Good.
Our intention is to impart a certain information or a certain feeling, and the impact is way different than what we planned, what we expected. And how do you navigate that when your intention really was honorable, but what you said touched something that changed it into a really different meaning? So how do you get past that? How do you find
Definitely.
out what happened? How do you talk about it with the other person, especially if you both have hot buttons about it?
Oh yeah. So we also include then about how you listen and how you receive it too. So much about the giving and receiving. So we can talk about both sides of that.
Yeah, really, very much. Yeah.
Yes.
It's such a two-way street. I mean, one of the things I know you say as well is listen to learn, not just respond. But so many of the times we're busy going, okay, can they just finish? Because I have this great new point I have to make. Or, I want to refute what they're saying without even acknowledging their point of view.
Yeah. That is one of the biggest hurdles I think we have in life. And if you watch politicians or it's like the world is set up this way for most people, that we are so built to have our own agenda ready to spew out that we don't always hear what's being said to us. And so it is that miscommunication. And because we're about romantic relationships, which I feel like is one of the most bedrock foundational pieces we need to work with, because in business is a whole other thing, but it's still the same thing too. So this topic could help somebody be a better business person, better salesperson, better politician, better guide or leader, any of those things, because this is all applicable.
Mm-hmm. And then also your other personal relationships that aren't just romantic, that family members, friends. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because miscommunication and misunderstanding, there's times when I've talked to couples and there's this huge kerfuffle. I mean, this huge. And when we excavate back, where did it start? Where did it start? It was often a really completely nothing but misunderstanding.
Right.
Really, that's what you meant? Really, that's what you said? It's fascinating. Yeah. And we've all experienced that. We all have. And how do you try to prevent it, which is a lot about the subject today, but then what do you do if it happens? How do you navigate it? Yeah.
And that's the thing is it's not so much pulling back and not saying something. It's about how do you really, again, listen to what it is you want to ask for and how do you articulate in a way that is clear and clean for you, And then when the other person hears it, one of the things we did in my master program, in my master psychology background, we talked about different communication skills, and one of those was called perception checking. I'm moving to solutions already. And the things basically was what we do is when we would say something to somebody, we then say, "Can you let me know what you heard?"
Mm-hmm.
So I know what I said reached you. Not so much to make them right or wrong. It wasn't about saying you didn't hear me right. No, it's about, did I communicate clearly so you can actually hear what I actually did intend to say.
Yes.
I mean, that one alone can change marriages.
Very much. Yeah, I've learned it is called that was the same kind of technique where you say something and then the other person says back what they heard you say or thought they heard you say. And what was fascinating to me was I expected people to very easily repeat back what the other person said. But the part that surprised me was when the person said, I know that's what I said, but it turns out that's not what I meant. And doesn't that waylay this really big problem?
Yeah.
If they get a chance to go, oh, I really do get that's what I said, but what I really meant was blah, blah. So then the other person repeats back that, and then they really feel heard. Because if you respond to what the person really said, it's not what they meant, they're going to feel completely misunderstood. And then we're...
That's the thing. So that's why it's good to perception check to ask, because a lot of us have this habit of thinking that whatever's been said is law. It's done. So we must respond to that, reply to that exactly as it is, without verifying that we heard what was said accurately. Mm-hmm. And we wonder why we have miscommunication.
All the time.
Yeah.
So maybe we could address some of the conversations that seem to touch on hot buttons with people that I think are where we're trying to be heard so that we could feel trusted by what we say and that we can trust the other person to not only believe us, but be honoring about our feelings, our thoughts, that they are willing to listen and understand, even if they don't agree.
Yes, and I want to put something in front of that slightly because he says, like, oh, something came up.
Yes, I love that. I watch it happen on your.
I know. I'm pretty transparent.
It's really good.
Because one thing I remember, I posted a meme about this the other day, which is basically from one of my favorite teachers, Alison Armstrong. She talks about how women need to understand that men are not just hairy women. The understanding of the deeper meaning of that is that we don't articulate and speak and communicate the same way. We emote differently. So we're men and women in communication in relationship. And I would say more necessarily, it's almost like feminine, masculine, because there is some variance between men and women on some of this. But basically, because you were talking about how we feelings and our emotions as well as what we want to say. Well, men's emotions are not the same as women's emotions. No. So how we communicate something for men and women tends to come from different places physiologically and then energetically too. So what we're communicating and asking for, a lot of times for a woman, it can be she's asking for something that she needs to feel safe about. So it's something she's asking a man for because it's not so much necessarily she needs the exact answer to the exact question, but she wants to know that more than anything else that he heard her, because when she knows that he hears her, she feels safer. So sometimes the question is just the carrier for the need for safety. So the question doesn't have any relevance itself. It's more about, if I communicate this to you, you heard me, I feel safer now because you're there for me. That sort of thing. Yes. So then on the other side of that, which you were talking about, is about those hot buttons, because it's the unsafe feeling we get in your communication. So I want to give you that. I want to put that on the front end before we dive into this.
Thank you. It's such a good clarification. And I am a big devotee of Ms. Armstrong as well.
Yes.
Yes, and share her teachings a lot. Because once we really do acknowledge and agree that there are so many communication styles that are different between the masculine and the feminine, whatever the encasing is, that we have a better chance of not going down really far that misunderstanding road, that we might put our foot on it and go, oh, wow, this feels wrong. Is there something I need to check out? Rather than, doing the 100-yard dash and then going, oh, this is all crap. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that's what happens. It's like a extra power booster gets shot off behind us when something tender is touched.
Yeah.
So certainly in the world right now, one of the hot buttons is to mask or not, to vaccine or not, which side of the political aisle are you on? I mean, those are a lot of the really big world things that could still affect people in their relationships.
Absolutely.
And the subject that always pops up to me, because it comes up a lot lately, is COVID test or not. Because people are now getting braver about meeting in person. We talked about how they would text and they would talk on the phone, and then they would do some sort of Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or WhatsApp and really get a chance to see the person and get to know them better. And with some opportunities opening now where people can go to a public park and go for a walk or sit at opposite ends of a picnic table or actually do dining on a patio, what are you going to do? Are you going to talk about, are you going to have a COVID test or not? And you need to share the results. Because I've always talked about STD and STI tests.
Exactly, yeah.
People are so funny about, well, I can't have that conversation. I said, but you're considering letting a part of you into their body or a part of them into your body, and you can't have that conversation. We really need to have a whole nother conversation about
Yes.
And I think that could lead to lots of misunderstandings if you don't talk about the why, how it does make you. So it made me think about the safe part. What part makes you feel safe and heard and understood? And even if they have a different feeling about it, they think the virus is silly and they don't think masks are necessary. And now you want to meet somebody that thinks it's horrible and they know people and they can't imagine going anywhere without a mask or with anybody that isn't wearing a mask. How do you navigate that conversation?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing about this is because, to be really transparent, none of us really know exactly, first of all, what's really happening. It's all best guessing. I mean, even the best scientists are just more advanced guessing than we have, if you want to be literal about it. So we don't know for sure. That's why, the vaccines that have been currently in testing as of this week have a 95% success rate. They're not 100%. So it's all best guessing to a degree, which
And it's
means
still
that,
a small sampling, so you don't really know.
Exactly. I mean, I was reading about what's happening in China where they're actually giving out the vaccines. They're basically doing a test on real people without actually doing a proper pre-test. So anyway, getting back to this topic at hand.
Oh, yeah, because we could so go down that rabbit hole.
Oh, yes. Well, the one thing about speaking about COVID tests is that I know, and there's been articles all over the place you can read about it, how the COVID tests are not 100% accurate, or I should say 100% guaranteed. Yeah. So to get a COVID test, I mean, a friend of mine, he actually is one of my personal friends, he did a COVID test and found out he was tested positive. But he didn't feel anything, so he thought maybe he's asymptomatic. He tested a week, it was like 4 or 5 days later, tested negative. And I've heard stories about this. People have been tested, like had a positive and negative test the same day. So the testing itself has room for improvement. Again, best guessing right now. Yeah. So in that context about connection with somebody, if you choose to meet somebody in public and in person, do we let our passions override our wisdom? Mm-hmm. Because yes, you could be around somebody and have a picnic with them when you sit on a tablecloth that's 10 feet wide, you speak more loudly, then the testing is not as critical to decide if you can meet them or not. So there's all different layers.
Right.
And what I guess I want to get back to, though, is also about communication, your feelings about something. Again, back to the feelings I said earlier. And I know that, well, generally speaking, we men are less connected to our feelings than women are. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, these are all generalities because there's variances, of course. And I know that for us, it's more of a mechanical thing or a logical thing versus an emotional or an intuitive feeling. For women, it's the other way around. So there's going to be a difference of perspective that comes through the conversation often too. And again, when a woman is speaking to a man, a lot of times what she's asking for underneath the words is a feeling of safety. And that's something we have the innate ability as men to hold a space for, is safety when we're in it, when we're inhabiting ourselves too. So that communication, which is nonverbal, is a big piece of this conversation too. And so the idea of the COVID piece, for me as a man, I feel is this nebulous thing because I can't control the circumstances. I can take care of myself, and I definitely make sure that I am avoiding high-risk experiences. I don't go to big groups. I go to the store, I wear a mask, and when I go out for walks, I wear a mask close to other people and these things. So doing what I can do, and fingers crossed and pray and trust that I'm going to stay healthy. But I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of providing a guaranteed safe space is to the best of my ability. And in
Mm-hmm.
communication, just to bring it back to that piece,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have this job to understand is that we're always communicating to the best of our own ability. That our facts that we speak are filtered through our own perception.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what we say is black may be some shade of gray. It may not be black.
Yeah.
So we've got to be clear that what we're speaking to our people is not always right. And one of the biggest attachments we have in communication is wanting to be the person who's right, making the other person wrong.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got a long way around to make a point.
Oh,
So that thing
that
about
is
saying,
the important point.
well, this is the thing about communication is that when we're communicating to make a point to put ourselves in the right position of being right, you're by default making somebody else wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't a healthy communication either. So our relationships have to be, my perception, have to be a blend of give and take and of meeting in a sense of understanding in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So we can both be understood, and neither one's perfectly right, neither one's perfectly wrong, but we understand there's an understanding of perspective, which is
Yes.
what we aim for.
Yes.
So
many good points. So many good points. And speaking from the safety part for women, one of the things that I know for me as a woman, with the two X chromosome and the women I talk to, part of what makes us feel safe is if we say, this is what would make me comfortable. It would make me more comfortable if you and I both had tests so that, you know, if we wanted to sit closer or maybe we wanted to hug at the end, then I wouldn't have to worry about that. I could just have that away from my thoughts. And even if the man that I'm talking to doesn't believe in the virus and doesn't believe in masks, if he wants to spend time with me, he would then listen to, this is important to me, and this is why, because it would make me feel comfortable. It's a very good test that he would be interested in pleasing me. Because
indeed,
it's generally not an unreasonable request unless he's like so anti all of it. And then we might not have enough in common if he was really, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd even be fine with a discussion about, wow, so how are you feeling about, if you wanted to ask me more questions about it, I'm so fine with that, because then it feels like, wow, he really is interested in what I think. And he's interested in hearing more about why, not in an argumentative way, but in a confirmation way almost. Yeah, so that would go a long way to have me start feeling more safe with him. And one of the things that's important is I've now said it so clearly.
Yes.
One of the things I continue to teach women, because if you just said, you know, would you get a COVID test? Well, maybe, but why? Believe in it. You know, why would I do that? Because you're asking his opinion, which is a perfectly valid opinion. But if it's going to have an impact on you, you need to express your opinion first.
Right.
And then see how he feels about your opinion. What does he think about your opinion? And I think that's where women often don't, first, they don't always know, because I'll say, well, let's look at what would make you happy in a relationship, what kinds of things. And they're often kind of clueless, which is sad, which is why they're not in a healthy relationship.
Right.
Great place to start. And then how do you articulate it? How do you articulate it to yourself? And then how do you articulate it to a man? Because telling yourself is different than telling him, because you do need to use some different words.
That is true.
Yes. So that's how I typically talk about approaching dating to really solidify the safety part is, what do you need from him to make you feel safe? So my comments always are, I like going to a familiar place on the first meeting. I like going to a place that I know how to get there. If it's a restaurant, I know the people that work there because I've gone and talked to them ahead of time, or it's a place I go regularly. And because, as you said, you know, it wasn't you, but I told you the story about the Allison Armstrong. So I do this meetup on Monday nights for singles over 50
Yes.
in the area. And one of the people, a guy, had gone to an Allison Armstrong conference up by LAX. And once it started, she said, so I want to know, of the women here, how many of you were mildly or more concerned walking from the parking structure into the hotel? 100 hands went up. There wasn't a woman that didn't put her hand up. And the guy goes, and there were lots of men that looked very confused because they didn't worry about it.
Right.
At all. It wasn't even a part of their consciousness. And it made them go, oh, well, that is what it's like to be a 2X chromosome. We do have to think about our safety a lot because half the population is bigger and stronger than us. And there are a segment of that population that could hurt us on purpose or after hurting us on purpose. So we do have to run in packs and be careful. So having that understanding with men, that layer of how do you continue to make us feel safe and secure about you as a person?
Yeah.
It's going to help us maybe feel a little more comfortable saying what we mean, because we're not going to say it if you're going to get mad at us or yell at us or, gosh, if we really like you and then you won't like us. Yeah.
It's one of the biggest awakenings I think I had around women was when I saw that experience. I had an experience similar to that in an environment where, I mean, I knew about it somewhat because I've read enough and worked with enough clients. But when I saw a mass of women basically say, yes, this is a place we feel unsafe, it wasn't so much I wasn't aware of it. I just wasn't owning it and going, oh, I see now more clearly that I need to step in a different role around the women I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. It's been one of my innate things. I've talked about this before in other conversations about being raised in England, having this sort of gentlemanly conduct streak built into me. It's like it's in my DNA, the behavior. And one of those things is always to invite or to offer to walk a woman to her car, whether it's my partner, whether it's a girlfriend or anybody, just out of respect.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really know about it as being a thing that was making her safe, because I'm not like I'm the biggest guy around to defend her honor no matter what happens. But it's more about, it was out of respect. But the side effect, I realize now, I'm looking back in hindsight, was how much I was contributing to a sense of safety to have somebody with her who stood in his truth with her.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't about I had to beat somebody up to defend her from somebody, but in fact my presence was enough to deter other people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to look, I wasn't looking like, oh, I'm tough and strong. It was just being with her was enough.
Yeah.
So recognizing the gift from that, and frankly, for any men watching this, being able to provide something as easy as that, simply to walk from where we are to her car, so she get in the car safely and drive away, and her feelings of relief and relaxation magnify dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go, nice job.
Oh, yes. You get lots of credit for it. Yes. Yes.
So that was one of the things I really got. So thank you for reminding me of that one.
You're so welcome. And thank you for giving your personal examples from the Y chromosome point of view, because I tell this to women and I know they believe me. I never don't feel they believe me. And it's always so validating when a man will say the same thing. Oh, wow. I really didn't see how big it was. I didn't see the impact. I didn't see how important this was to women. And so it is time that we need to take a break. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about, well, how would a woman ask and how would a man offer, so that we could use that as a really great way to say what you mean and mean what you say.
There we go.
In a way that could be fraught with lots of pitfalls. So this is Christine Baumgartner and Barry Selby. Let's talk about dating. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. there, Christine Baumgartner and Barry Selby back talking about how to mean what you say and say what you mean.
Building trust.
To build trust, yes. Because it is the foundation, I think, on both sides of the relationship. And we're certainly talking about the first line of layer, I think, would be the woman trusting the man. Because once we trust you, I think you'll have to tell me from the man's point of view, I think it would open up more availability for you to start trusting us with your thoughts and your feelings.
It's kind of like, it's funny. It's like, back to me, it's like a layer cake.
Yeah.
Is that it isn't something you go, yes, one, then one, done. It is an approach that builds layers and layers and layers. Yeah. And speaking of communication, let me back up to what we said before the break about that place of safety. It wasn't something I knew about when I was younger. I said, like, I would, offer to help a woman by walking into a car, especially back in England when it was raining. I'd have the umbrella and I'd walk into a car and walk away. That was kind of like innate in me. But safety was never the conversation in my mind. I wasn't aware of that. That was more recent, again, because of the work I've been doing for the last 15 years. And understanding that safety was a fundamental piece of what I could provide just by being with a woman. Not to do anything, just to be in her space can create safety, which is an incredible sense of trust. And that gift being given from her to me, especially when I was with a woman who obviously she could tell me that, and I could get it because I was getting layers of communication, was such a sense of, well, first of all, it was like pride, because like, I could do this, I can bring this to the conversation. But the other part was also is I could relax because I then knew that I was functioning in a way that was effective and being received. Mm-hmm. And so that conversation piece becomes easier because instead of testing the waters, which a lot of times in communication we're doing, so we're testing the waters, like, if I say this, what will be her response? What if you say this, what will be his response? This sort of thing. It's like, oh, it becomes easier. It's taking down one of the walls of communication because we've passed that initial stranger barrier to like more friend connection. So our communication can become easier and easier. And that's the thing I'm noticing in all my relationships, friends, and all sorts of times with female friends, because we've known each other longer, our communication is easier and it is less prepared in a way. Mm-hmm. But that's the warning sign for me. And I want to come back to the beginnings we said early on about, because it's so much less what's the word looking for? Prepared, we can get lazy. Mm-hmm. So it's so important to verify that what we're saying is being received. So again, that thing is at the beginning about how do we do what I call perception checking. Is checking to make sure that what I said is being heard, because sometimes I've said things in relationships for a long time where I'm like, oh, that didn't land right.
No, yeah.
So that part is important about communication from a place of, again, as we said earlier on, checking in ourselves first to make sure we're communicating what we want to actually communicate, that we're actually asking what we want or saying what we want, so the other person has a chance to understand what we need. Yes. Because, as you said earlier, like that thing about when somebody gives you back the feedback and you go, that wasn't what I meant, doing that work inside. Because the more advanced we get in this work, the more advanced we get in communication, we can start to have the inner feedback system going to go, is this going to be the question that's going to get me what I want when I ask this person? So inwardly checking out, perception checking our own questions to make sure we get our question asked so we do get what we want. It's almost like if you imagine you're talking to this person and you've got one shot to get your point across, how much more careful do you be in what you ask for or say?
And how much more clear will you be? So there's the part where you say, what do I really mean? What do I need to convey? What is it that I need to hear back? And because it always has to start with us.
Yes.
What's important to us? So if we go back to the walking to the car, because as a woman, what does it take for me to accept your offer? There's a big group of people and you're going to offer to walk me to my car, which in the big picture is nice. It would be nice to have a guy so that I didn't have to walk by myself. And yet now I'm going to walk with a guy. So what do I need to hear from you? What do I need to feel about you? What do I need to, how much time do I need to spend with you? You can't just pop up.
Right.
Maybe if you worked at the hotel, maybe and had a uniform on, maybe. But I have a person that I'm at a conference with, it's that group activity. It's how we used to meet people to date. We used to meet in the neighborhood. We met them at work. We met them at school. We got to see how they interacted with other people. We got to see how they interacted with us over a little time. So if part of the reason is you want to walk somebody to their car because you'd like to make points and you think they look interesting, and maybe it would be somebody you'd like to have more than just a walk to the car with, you need to, and on both sides, I'm going to give this advice to women too, make a point of talking to them. If you're at a conference, who knows conference now, but on a break, or if you meet somehow in a group, that you talk to them other times throughout the process so that you don't, it's not just, you're not just coming up as a stranger, because they are a stranger. And why would I trust a stranger to go into this dark old parking lot? I'm going to grab a couple of women and say, let's all walk together. And we've done that where we're like, who's got the closest car? And then we'll drive each other to their cars. That's how careful we are. You guys don't do that. You just never think about it.
Not really.
It's the last thing, I mean, you could get mugged in a parking garage, but you don't worry about it. We think about it every time we walk from our car and we walk back to our car. So that would be when you think of what is my intention? What do I need to say and do? What's my meaning behind this so that I can now build trust, that you would need to go up and, wow, what did you think of the conference? Or what's your opinion of the speaker? What did you learn? Or, wow, I heard you ask that really interesting question. And you need to be sincere.
Yes.
Some sincerity besides
no agenda.
Well, you can have a little agenda that they're cute. I'm okay with that, because that's often, we don't just go because we think they asked an interesting question. It might be, could happen.
Right.
But since we're talking about romance and dating, I'm going to say probably not.
Okay.
Thought they were cute or hot, or you like
attractive.
They're very attractive in whatever ways floats your boat. And go say something to them about something they did or said, or that has to do with not their physicality. Because we like being complimented as women, but we don't trust you quickly because of that. We trust you because you compliment us. We trust you because you noticed that we said something or did something that you thought was cool or you wanted to know more about, and then you can compliment us. So, but start out with something to do with more about our brains or our conversation.
Right.
Because there it is that you're saying what you mean, just not all of what you mean right away. Because you don't have to say everything you mean right away.
That could be
I advise you not to.
Yes, that's a
good one. I even got a
yeah.
blush out of that. You look good in pink.
Thank you.
I've never made you blush before. That was fun.
No, that was a memory for me. So thank you.
I could tell something happened. It was
yeah. So a couple of things to that. No, just the idea about giving you like the whole litany of everything you're thinking about saying to that person in one go versus spreading it over 3 months. You know, yeah, that was very funny. But it's interesting because when you said about when you said the girls are driving each other to their cars once they go to the closest car, thinking back to when I go with people out from a building. With the guys, it'd be like, we walk in the same direction. The guy will go, okay, it's my car, okay, bye, see you, and walk onto our own car. But with women, oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes when I walked a woman to her car, she would invite me to let me know, to actually invite me to be in her car, so she'd drive me to my car, because that's what women do. So women generally are more likely to do that than men, I'm realizing when you said that. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. But yes, it is what you said about before, about getting to know somebody before they walk you to the car, because if I'm going to go offer to walk someone to her car, because as a side effect of that, I'm helping her feel safe. I better make her feel safe in my presence first. I mean, but we don't do that. And that was one thing that came up when you mentioned too, that came to mind, was a lot of women actually, I suspect, and when I'm working with clients myself, is they don't always know, I should say women haven't necessarily learned to trust that gut feeling of safety. So they trust, I know plenty of women relationships have been through where they found out afterwards they didn't trust the man. It's like, if women practiced as a skill, I'm not sure I know if I could teach it, but it's teach a skill in how to build up that radar for safety, that sensitivity to, can the man she's standing next to be trustworthy? And that's a key, right? Yeah, you saw something.
I can teach you. I'll teach you. This is what I teach women.
There you go.
So I've not met a woman yet that at some point in her life, she didn't know she knew something. She knew something. It was the right dress, the right food, the right thing to say, the wrong thing to say, the wrong to go, don't go down that path. You just knew you knew.
Mhm.
Like you could pass a lie detector test. And so I asked them, where in their body did they feel it?
Got it.
Good. And I've had here, mine's my solar plexus, I've had stomach, I've had lower back. I mean, it's wild. Everybody's not the same.
Right.
But I tell women then, that place will never lie to you because it never has. You have a track record. So it always, in the past, when we do some digging and things haven't worked out, and they go, gosh, I think I kind of knew something in the beginning. It was that place going this.
Yeah.
And because there's the chemistry or the connection, or for women, we don't want to seem arbitrary. We don't want to seem argumentative. We don't want to be difficult. We want them to like us. And so we'll keep pushing it away, even though it's going harder and harder and harder. So because we have this gift, an innate, inbred gift, that when we listen and in this way, and at least say, I think I need to know more about this. Because not every time when you get an inclination that there's something amiss or maybe wrong or that it could be potentially bad, as long as it's kind of just a low roar,
Mhm.
then you just need to ask more questions. You need to find out more so that you can either say, wow, it is scary, dangerous, or it's just, oh, it's kind of nervous, new. But you have to pay attention every time because mine never pops up unless there's a really good reason. And people are amazed how much over the years before I met my late husband and since I've used online dating, and I have never once scary, awful date. Not one time. And it's because I'm reading a profile. It could sound perfectly fine. And that place in my solar plexus says, I mean, so loudly, I can hear it as if it's in the room talking to me. And I'll just go next. Every time I've done that, and I've never had a scary, awful date. So as I've taught women to pay more attention to their instincts, they tend to not end up in those bad situations. Because then the thing that I'm going to tell you that's the problem that happens is when we don't listen, and we don't know that we're not listening, we now decide we can't trust our instincts because they've shown us wrong. Well,
Right.
where's my instinct been? It hasn't been helping me, or it told me wrong. It's because we ignored it. We really ignored it. Is that helpful to hear it that way?
Yeah, because the thing is, when you said that one, of course I know this, but I've not taken it on as that piece to learn to reuse in this context. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you. Yeah, and for me, because the thing for me is, I think it's for men, is that because we're so driven from above the neck, that to trust physicality, and I've got my own version of that myself, but it's been years of taking down the walls to that part inside myself, not practicing necessarily to trust it. It's taking down the overriding voice in my head, the overriding structure that runs the show.
Yeah.
Because I have actually, and just because I've been on this journey for a long time, I have various aspects of myself that I trust implicitly for certain pieces of guidance, input. When I'm working with clients, I can feel into a part of myself where it lines up. I just drop into a place that I can trust implicitly will help that client.
Yeah.
But for helping myself, it's a different energetic. And so I understand for we men, we've got room to grow, or should say room to open up to receive more input from our physicality, because we are trained to be very mental driven people.
Yeah.
Women too, but men especially. So that internal and easy access to that place inside, something we can practice more. We need to practice more as men for sure.
So when I talk to men about it, I go, what if you had that you knew it was your gut instinct? Your gut told you this was right or this was wrong. And it proves out every time. It's really interesting how people look back and go, I guess it has been accurate 100%. We just don't realize it because we're
Right.
too busy zooming on to the next thing. And I do find that it is interesting when I can get men to drop down into even just the gut part of their body, that they're like, wow, yeah, I already knew that. I just didn't know I knew it.
or didn't recognize that he knew it.
Yes. So then you
Yeah,
get back to your above the neck part, because this is the part you really want to come from. Okay, I just wanted to see the thread. Do you see the thread? It's you down to your gut. We can bypass everything else for right now if you're not into talking about your feelings. Let's just go with your gut first.
Right.
But as they go, well, that's why I trusted you. And I go, well, thank you very much. We're getting along just fine.
It's wonderful. I mean, there's an old quote I remember from years ago about how the mind is a great servant but terrible master. And so recognizing that when we trust our internal guidance, and for me it's heart-based for my work especially, is letting the heart lead, but let the mind become the mouthpiece for the heart versus the overrider. Like it's like the head is not the puppet master; it's the servant to the heart.
Yes.
And I think for our work, and especially for women, especially as well, being heart-led is much easier. Excuse me. And for us men, we've got the work again. Our work is to learn how to trust that part inside. I'm grateful. I mean, I started this work in the mid '80s, so I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not saying it takes that long, but I know that definitely for me it took that long because I was a slow learner to really start trusting that deeper place inside that is much more trustable. Speaking of trust, so I can trust that part inside more implicitly. So then when I speak from that place, it will land. And back to the thing about saying what you mean, I know when I listen from that place to speak from and to communicate from, I'm much more effective at being able to communicate what I really need and really want and even want to say, so it's received. And when I listen from that place inside, it's funny, there was, again, in my master program, they had this great little stuffed toy they had that somebody made for them because they called it, in, again, one of the skills. These are very simple skills we learn, but they're really powerful, called heart-centered listening. And so this little puppet they made, which was like a big purple heart with silver ears on the outside of it, like as a reminder. I mean, it's cute. Yeah, this is a master degree program. Sounds very formal. But we talked about that. And the idea being was that we would listen with our clients. I mean, I'm going, I know this stuff. I did it, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. That we would sit in the counselor's position. And our job would be not to think about what the client said, but be to like open up our heart to receive in what they were saying. And so actually would hear what they would mean. So oftentimes what we do is we would hear what they meant different from what they said. So we as a listener would actually bypass their words.
Yeah.
So we would go back when we feed back to them what they said, we'd say, what I feel like you said was this, which may not be what they actually said. And then they go, oh yeah, that was what I meant. So it works both ways. It's not just about, us being able to communicate ourselves. It's about how well do you listen to other people? Can you listen from a place where you go deep enough, where you get what they mean underneath what they're saying?
In my world, I call it, I get a download from them.
There you go.
I get it. Or this voice will go, the first time it happened, it was startling. This voice said, say this to them. I'm like, no, it's too I'm like, really say that? I go, no. I'd have this while they're talking, I'd have this whole argument going on in my head. And I finally go, fine. All right, I'm going to say, you're going to be wrong. And I'd say it and they go, oh, that's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
It's fulfilling. And that's where you go, trust. I really was heard. I really was listened to. I really was understood. And the more we can practice doing it for ourselves, personally and professionally, the more the other person that we're talking to, if they're available, will give it back to us.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's an internal, innate, basic, animalistic desire to have this happen, to be understood and heard and build up a trust, not with every single person in the whole world, the people that are in your most intimate circles, that it's something that we strive for that is so elusive, and we feel very unfulfilled, I think, in the world in general, because we don't feel it enough. We don't believe this enough. We don't know how to open ourselves for it. We don't know how to ask for it from another person. We're back to the, figure out what you need to say and make it so that you mean what you say and say what you mean, because first you have to trust yourself that this is really how I feel, and how am I going to convey it to the other person, and then how to give them the opportunity, if they're available, to say it back to you.
Yeah.
And oh, it's wonderful when it happens, and it takes work. And I think people are frustrated because it doesn't just magically happen. And they're like, I want them to do it first. That's always, I have to go first. I go, well, first, because you're the person on the phone with me. And if I could mentally beam it to the other person, I would, but I can't. So we're going to start with you. And what I find, if they're willing and able, when we talk next, they're like, wow, look how I got to feel the client. And then the experience that I had with the other person was so much more open and so much more sharing and so much more safe. Both started feeling more safe. So the trust is the ultimate goal. It's just you have to do the work to get there.
And as a PS on that, because something you said just it really up something inside of me was that when we really do have this level of communication, we drop down that deep inside and we open up that much space. The word that kept coming up for me was being received. Mm-hmm. That when we are really allow ourselves to bring the other person in, I mean, this to me is like when you raise the relationship quality to another level entirely, is when we actually understand with our partner that our communication with that person allows them to be received by us and us to be received by them. It creates a place of intimacy and again, safety, as you mentioned. So we trust each other implicitly because we now know each other on a different level.
Yes.
And that level, that's really sort of taking down all the walls of the pretense and the assumption and the masks we wear and all that sort of stuff. That creates a much more open place to communicate. And that, for me, is one of the best, one of the highest qualities of relationship we can have.
And as you were mentioning, the layers. So the other thing that people get so tempted is they want to just dump it all, open it all, receive it all. And it doesn't usually work out really well because who knows where the other person is and who knows what vulnerable things will come up. And so you share a little, you keep adding layers and you see, can I keep moving forward? And that's the other part about knowing what you mean, that, gosh, I would like to get to know you better. How are you feeling with that? And they might not be available for that. So then you go, okay, well, what can we do? Can we stay at this layer? And okay, I can have another friend, and then I'll look for somebody else that wants to go deeper. Because if you just get all enamored and you start opening up too much and you haven't talked about, well, what is my intention with this? Where is it I would like this to go? Then the other person is kind of in the dark and hurt you terribly unintentionally. So that's another part about, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What is your intention? And expressing it so that the other person knows, wow, no, I'm not feeling that way at all. I mean, I could maybe, or I might never. And it's kind of scary to do that. It's the thing that will save us from keep getting our heart broken and our emotions battered, because then we go, oh, I give up and I'm never going to trust again. When we've not really figured out what we mean to achieve with this next conversation or with this next person. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. I was on the same page, which is really, just to reiterate or to say another way, is that really I feel like for most of us, we don't actually know what it is we really want. And so by really asking ourselves those questions first, before asking anybody else or telling anybody else, that sense about what do you mean is really about what is the value or the meaning I want to have with this person. And because a lot of times our communication is so not that, when they reject us, it's like they're rejecting what we're not wanting anyway. So what's the problem? Particularly about what we really do want to be, to have, to express, to connect with, to have received. And then speak from that place, because the other person may be going, I've been waiting for someone to do that, or be that, or present that. And if they say no, you go really clearly, that's cool, because the thing is, when you really know what you want, it's one of the gifts, by the way, when you know what you really want and the other person doesn't match it, it's like, thank you, move out the way, I can find somebody who does.
Yes, you don't waste your time.
Exactly. So it's a great navigation tool.
Oh, it's perfect. So yes, the first step is figuring out what is it that you need and want, and then figuring out a way to express it that doesn't feel needy or demanding or overbearing or too much. Yeah. Right. Such an interesting journey that you and I teach people face themselves. Because some people want to go too slow, that they're not going to go anywhere. And then some people just want to, bring the whole truck and dump it all out. And neither one of those techniques usually work very well.
No.
Yeah. And then getting a chance to have a dialogue back and forth with the other person. How do you open that up? How do you make it available for the other person to show you themselves and see if they feel trusting of you, and can you feel trusting of them? It's such a journey.
Well, that's the thing also is with your work and my work, we don't do single sessions with people. It's like we've got a real journey to take together. Yeah. So when we work together, that's one thing that I would be very worried if a coach said, "I'll just be with you for one session."
Yeah.
This is a journey we're exploring. We're navigating, and for most people, there's some unpacking to do first. So let's do the journey together.
Yeah. Oh, I've had a couple of those conversations lately, but I'm really impatient. Well, that means you'll go faster. It takes more than a couple.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to do the work. So, oh my gosh, here we are at the stopping point again. How does that happen so fast? I just don't know. It's the fastest conversation I have every week is with you because it's so much fun.
Well, thank you. Likewise.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, but if you would like to continue this conversation with us, we would be so happy. And the way to get a hold of me is my website is www.theperfectcatch.com. And at the top, you click on what's holding you back from love. And that will give you a chance to have a very personal, intimate, deep diving kind of fun conversation about what's been going on in your dating life. You could also email me at Christine, CHRISTINE @theperfectcatch.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. You can find videos of me personally and Barry and me. Tell people how to get a hold of you.
Certainly. So on my website is my name, so barryselby.com, easy to find me. And if you want to click on the first button in the navigation bar, it says Let's Chat. And you fill out a form and we can have a conversation that is confidential, private, and constructive. And definitely something that I love offering people first off to make sure we do have a rapport, because like we said in this conversation, it is about having that ability to communicate what you really want and being able to be heard. And that's what the first conversation is about. On my website, there's tons of my books on website, coaching programs, courses, everything else on my website too. You can email me directly, as in the note here, which is barry@barryselby.com. My social media presence is widespread. Basically, my name is Barry Selby and everything, although it's tweaked on Instagram, it's The Real Barry Selby because my other name got taken away. And on, what's the other one? Oh, on Facebook, it's easy to find me on my business page, which is barryselby.author, although my personal page is up there too. I do have thousands of videos. All my Facebook Lives got stored on YouTube. So my YouTube channel, which is Barry Selby, there are well over 1,000 videos I've done, plus all these talks are archived there too, so you can find those as well. So youtube.com/Barry Selby. So you can find me all over social media.
Yes. And next week, I think Cece's going to do something unique and fun and different with a bunch of the hosts together because it's Thanksgiving next Thursday. So we won't.
It is.
Show, yes. Yes, you people that were from the other side of the pond don't like celebrating that. As rebel.
No, that's Independence Day.
Oh, is that? It's 4th of July is the really bad one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for now, we're going to do something fun and unique next week. I'm not even sure what it is. And then for sure, we'll see you in 2 weeks with
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So always good to see your smiley face, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Ms. Christine. Let's see you too with your hats and your lovely cat. And definitely in 2 weeks, and we'll see each other on social media as always. And
yes, yeah, sharing your great posts.
Thank you, and everyone's watching. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, comments, etc., please let us know. We'll respond as we can.
Yes, it'd be great to hear from you.